coming up and emerging as we get prepared for Open Metadata version 1.8. Another thing that is coming very soon is data contracts. So wanted to bring Harsha in to talk about Open Metadata and data contracts.
You can see my screen. Let me do a full slideshow. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm Harsha, and thanks, Nick. That's an awesome MCP intro. Again, hard thing to follow. MCP is everywhere, but so is data contracts. So we'll see. You can keep the excitement about of today's community meetup. So why and how we are doing the data contracts, right? So what is the reason that we need a data contract? We live in a world of schema-less, right? So what is that? So most of you or most of us who ever dealt with data probably received an email or a Slack notification or whatnot saying, hey, the dashboard that you built is not working. The pipeline is broken. And all the chaos ensues. We go, we fight, figure out across the organization to figure out how this, change happened. I haven't done any changes to the pipeline. What went wrong? Only to find out somewhere upstream, the producer who's shipping the data probably changed the schema without notifying the consumers. That's us who's using the data. So we kind of live in a world of schema-less, right? So what is that, right? So the producers are focused on the applications and the improvements that they're doing. They're not very aware of how the data that they are shipping. The main goal is to ship a better API, better product. The logs that are coming to the data infrastructure, your data warehouse, that are powering your ML models, your reports and dashboards. They're not aware of how those things are being used, who is using it. Same with the data consumers, right? So the analysts, the business users or whatnot, who's building these pipelines, dashboards and reports, not aware how the data is being shipped into these data warehouses. So when a change goes in, the change is not aware of the schema that they are changing. Similarly, on the other side, we are not aware of how the schema is changing, and hence your pipeline breaks, your dashboard breaks. And this kind of creates a lack of trust between, hey, is there anything is the pipeline that I'm building without change of code? It's a dashboard that I'm building. It's the ML model that I'm building is going to read me, a high quality data product that I'm building, because this data in the upstream can change. I'm not notified. So all of these things doesn't create a trust. When some changes happening to the product, am I getting the right data that I'm expecting off of? So this creates the workouts. We are all kind of, trying to do the better job. So we go to Slack, we can talk to these data producers, have a offline, not standardized contract saying that, hey, you're my friend. If you make any changes, please let me know so that I don't break my dashboard. I don't get this, email alert that my users are not happy with. So we cannot create these contracts. Kind of works for a while, but what happens if the engineer, the person that you are working with leaves or moves on to another project? You moved on to another project. The tribal knowledge that we have built, it kind of lost. Again, we came back to the original situation of schema breaks, nobody notified, and data itself is unusable. And this problem is kind of getting a lot more and more complicated because, as you see, the data infrastructure, for all good reasons, all the reasons we have, is becoming increasingly complex. The distance between the person who's actually producing the data versus the consumers in between all the other tooling is increasing, right? So there is no clear ownership. There is no clear lack of lineage, and how that impacts if I'm making a change to the downstream. And from a downstream, who is impacting me, all of that is not kind of codified, not clearly shown in any other platform. So when you Google for what is a data contractor, so you get it says, it's an agreement between producer and consumers. But what exactly is this agreement? Now let's draw the parallels to a software engineering from a data engineering point of view, right? So if ever kind of stood up any service in any company, we go through these several iterations of a service level agreement, right? So I'm standing up my API, or I'm shipping this cool new project that helps users to do amazing things in the product. When we are going to go put it in production, we sit down with our technical architects, product manager, DevOps, they're all going to ask you questions like, what is the SLAs that you're going to provide on this API? What is the latencies? What happens if the service is degraded? Are we adding alerts on top of it? How do you roll out without backward compatible changes? This API going to be used across the company. How do you make sure that the API that you're shipping going to be have the backward compatibility? So all of these questions asked in a software engineering when you are pushing the service into production, right? We have to codify that. We have to have on-call support. We have to have ruling upgrades. We need to make sure that changes that we are making backward compatible. But when it comes to data, it never been the case. Data is like always kind of a thought of a secondary nature because services are what driving the user traffic and everything else. But data is such an important product in the world of LLMs, in the world of ML models that we are trying to build in dashboards to make the decisions. So that is where the data contract comes into play, right? So it's similar to what a service level agreement, but for data. It's an agreement where a consumer who's using the data and a producer who's producing the data sitting down and saying that, hey, I need these quality expectation because this is how I'm using my data to power my ML models. I need these SLAs so that the data I'm using is not stale data, I'm not making decision based on months old data, week old data. And when things break, we do need ownership so that we as users of the data can go and ping those owners saying that, hey, this problem happening, help me fix it. So the goal is to promote reliability and any changes that we are doing and breaking change kind of informed and, be attentive to those changes so that things don't break out of an accident. So kind of switching to why OpenMetadata, right? So where we come into play. So if you're already using the OpenMetadata, you have all of these building blocks to build. You're probably already kind of using data contracts without saying this as a data contract, right? So we have, let me share this. We have from OpenMetadata from the very beginning, we started with before even saying, hey, data should be, have contracts and SLAs and everything. Metadata that we capture should have schemas and should have validations. So the metadata itself has a high contract value that when someone's saying table should be exist, this is how it exists in OpenMetadata. This is how it is same for the user who's using the UI. It is the same for the user who's using SDK, same for our connectors, which are automatically bringing all of this metadata into OpenMetadata. And any change that is happening to your metadata, be it a description change, someone adding a tag, adding owners, or someone changing a schema, the version, and there will be change logs for you to, look at historically how the data is, the metadata specification is evolving. And we have major and minor version guards. Like if you change a description, it's not a big deal. You're going to minor version that's minor change. But if you're changing a schema, it's a major version change because it's going to impact downstream users. There is alerts that can set up to inform the downstream users that, hey, somebody changed the customer table. Here is how the new schema looks like. So we started with the metadata as a groundbreaking field for that. Then we added data qualities and enforcement right within open metadata, right? So you want to bring all of these different personas into the open metadata. By that, typically in data producers, probably your, engineers, and then you have data governance, your business users, and you as a data engineer, data analyst. So far, the platforms are kind of catering differently to different these personas. We want to bring all of these different personas in the organizations on the same platform. That's where the contract establishment happens. That's where the collaboration happens. So to do that, we enable no-code UI test so that any user can add a test. You be it an engineer, be it a business user, be it a data governance person. They can establish saying that, hey, customer data, customer ID must not be null. I want to express that. I can come to open metadata and enforce that. When you create this test, it's not just for the nameset test, actually executing the test, running the results, providing you a time series fashion of how this test is behaving, right? And when the test fails, we also build an instant workflow. There's an instant is open for you. It also notifies the owners and any downstream users can figure out, if there is a test failure, if there is an instant open for me. So that again, all of your users can come together, collaborate, and figure out the root cause much faster rather than when a test fails, when a Python breaks, we are running around scattered. Now, lineage and observability, right? So end-to-end lineage, end-to-end column lineage. For that, we enable all the way from API services. You can see API collections, API endpoints. We have open API connector that can automatically bring service level API specifications, how they are producing the data into your transitional databases to the data warehouses, ML models, dashboards, and reports all the way to the end. So you have end-to-end visibility of that. You have freshness value and pipeline metrics, how they are doing, how fast the data is coming into my tables. So what is the last known updates and all of these things. Finally, root cause context. Like when it things big, how do you identify? Who should we go up the stream and talk to? All of these are encoded into open material today. To just take a moment to kind of showcase what we have. So it is a sandbox. This is my customers table. So I can go and search customer history. You have all of this amazing information right here laid out. And if I go to the lineage, it gives me, end-to-end lineage all the way from where the data is started and where it's going, right? Can also enable column level lineage, right? To understand which dashboard is influenced by which column. Finally, I can add observability. So when we add observability, I can see that on customer history, there are 18 tests are failing, which are kind of which column that are impacting, and the downstream, which dashboards are getting impacted as well. So you can look at this as a end-to-end observability platform to understand if I change a schema, if I break a quality test, how and who it will impact. Same with the data consumer side. If I am owning the artist dashboard here, I know from standing from artist dashboard, hey, it's actually the customer, not the operations view, not the artist. It's actually the customer history that's breaking my data. So I should be going and talking to those owners, right? And, you have all the nice features of exporting this offline for your offline analysis and so on. Going back to here. So what we have showcased is all the building blocks that are already available in OpenMetadata for you to kind of, if you're using OpenMetadata for any longer time, you're already doing all of these things. You're in a great shape. You understand, how the data is being built, what tests are there, who should you contact in case of failure. All of these things are built for you. You're already a step ahead in terms of implementing data contracts. So what we are doing in 1.8 is to kind of officiate this as a specification on the data contract. So we want to capture all of these attributes of, hey, what is the contract? What is the schema level checks that we want to do? What is SLAs? What is the quality and so on in a specification, and provide you as a contract at the table level, topic, or ML model. So I'll jump into we have wrote a long format kind of a design here. So feel free to jump in and provide some feedback. Is it readable? Should I zoom in? Readable? Okay.
It looks pretty good.
So what we have done here is as a specification. So again, everything in OpenMetadata starts with a metadata specification. The reason for that is we want to standardize the specification that informs how the API validates that specification. Our UI uses the same thing. Any helper tool, SDKs, connectors uses the same tooling. So we're standardizing the specifications in one place. Right? So what we have done here, what does the specification say for a data contract? It has a description. Then you get to choose should a data contract fail? Should you open an incident or not? And who are the owners of this contract? These are inherited owners of a target entity. For example, as a user, as a producer, I have a consumer. We are sitting together. We are building a contract for a table. So target entity links to that table saying that, hey, the contract that you both are working is towards the customer's table, and we can attach that contract to the table. And for initial release, we are doing it for table, topic, and ML models. And out of that, the first section talks about schema. So in a customer's table, there may be 10 columns today, right? So those 10 columns, there are 10 or 20 other teams using those 10 columns. There is a clear expectations of those 10 columns, right? There may be a customer ID, and the expectation is of type UI. Tomorrow, by using the schema section here, we can codify that saying that customer ID must always be UUID format. I do not want this to be ever broken. And the goal here is to inform the producers and the system. As long as this data contract is active and specified, the customer ID cannot change its format, right? But you can have other 5 columns where maybe that, as a producer, I'm getting a lot of feature requests to improve the customer's table. They're asking me add this column, maybe, last update from the customer. That column doesn't exist. So outside of the data contract, I can expand and evolve my schema without impacting my 10 columns that I've guaranteed for my consumers, saying this is the schema of that particular table. And I'm going to, stay with that. So this is a section where both producer and consumer says, this is the schema that we are agreed on. These are the types. This is the values that I want. This is the type of it, right? Now comes the semantics. Schema is great, right? So it's like, shipping APIs. We have all the validations and everything else. But if the API doesn't have a documentation, it's not as good as not existing, right? Semantics is where we are trying to capture that. I'm creating this amazing customer table. I have few users, but I'm not putting enough effort into documenting what the customer table is. What are the columns represent? Like, what is the glossary terms? What is the business concepts that I'm bringing in customer's table? So if I'm not documenting well, I'm not kind of educating beyond certain group. So this is for a way to enhance and enforce semantical checks, where you get to choose. If you're putting this data contract, I must have entity description, that is table level description, topic level description, or a column description required. And the tags, you must have at least one tag, one glossary terms. Any other integrity rules, maybe you have custom properties that you're bringing in, you can add those integrity rules as well into the semantics checks. Now comes the security. Now, what data we have here? Is it a PI data? Is it a GDPR data? Is it a CCPA? What are the policies that the company is handling? Like what classification of data that we are producing into this customer's table? Is it okay? So this kind of informs like what is your security policy going to be, right? And who can access it? At what level they can access it? Then comes the quality section. Again, we have all the data quality tests already. So what we are doing is to bring all the data quality checks that we already have and codify here, saying that I, as a consumer, am using, customer order amount. And I want to make sure that order amount never going to be, less than what. So I can create the data quality test and I can sit down with the producer and saying that, hey, this is how we are actually building my model, my chart, my dashboard, whatnot. This is the data I'm using it. I want to make sure that test passes this way. And again, codify the data contract. Finally comes SLA, right? So what is the refresh frequency? How often the data gets updated? What is the latency? Latency could be all the way from origin to this table. How do you have calibrated that max latency for that? And at what time actually data gets updated here? So that, if someone is looking at my dashboard every day at 9 a.m., but the data that I'm using lands at 12 p.m., I'm probably using it yesterday's data. So I can be more informed about the dashboard and my audience can be informed about this SLAs and availability time as well. Retention, right? How long the data is retained. Again, that can be informed by the security policies that you already have. And this can be codified saying that, hey, I need at least 30 days of data. If you don't have it, the model that I'm using it might not work better. So again, an agreement is established. At least minimum 30 days of data should be available for this particular consumer. Finally, version. Everything that we do in OpenMetadata through the specification is versioned, right? Like I said, we have any change that we have, there is a version history, change log. Similar to data contracts, how the data contract is evolving is also can be versioned. Finally, there is status. While we are building this particular data contract, it will be initially in a draft status. There will be reviewers. Once it is agreed upon, it becomes active. If anything breaks the data contracts, it becomes violated, right? And we're going to keep this in a time series fashion. If you're, again, look at any of our data insights and data test results, those show over a period of time how the test is passing, how the insights are behaving. Same with the contract, how long this is being green. Is it being broken in any time? Can we trust this data because this data contract is being upheld? So all of that encoded into this specification. So that's what we have done for the 1.8 APIs and specifications. Now, that's the initial. That's not where we want to stop. We want to build a data contract UI, right? So I'm going to showcase a mock. We're going to share GitHub issues and marks. Please provide as much feedback as you can so that you actually are building for taking to your use case into account, building a better product out of it. So how the data contract, again, is the mark visible? Zoom in. Looks good. Let's see if it looks good. Okay. So this particular page is a table page. Again, if you're using OpenMetadata, you're kind of aware of it. You land on this page, you have schema, activity field and task, sample data, and other elements here. So when you're using contract as another tab, when there is nothing, you can click and add a contract. Again, you have two options, right? You have add as a YAML and add as a web UI. You want to kind of cater to the multiple personas that exist in an organization. So let's go to the add web UI, right? So once we come here, we ask for the data contract title. Who are the owners? Again, the owners will be kind of inherited from the table itself. Some description about this if you want to enable the incident management in case the data contract is failed. Now you click on the schema. You get the schema level checks here, like what schema that you are adhering to. Maybe that particular tables have hundreds of columns, but most of the users are only using 10. And I want to make sure my contract says this schema will not change unless there's a formal discussions happens. And it will always remain the same. So that any queries that I'm writing is not failing in the middle of the night. Now comes the semantics, like at the table level, column level. At table level, I can say that, hey, description must set. I can give a sample description that I want to see. Owners, who are the owners going to be, tags, tier, and other additional elements that you continue to make here, including the custom properties, right? So that the definition of the table is properly defined. So it's not me and some other person, anyone later comes in can understand the documentation about this particular table. Security, right now we want to kind of keep it free form. We want to, again, take input from you and how do you want to define these policies. And we want to provide the data classification, which is our tag system to define what data this particular table has. Quality. If you already did the work and created a bunch of existing tests, you can bring those existing tests into this particular contract and say that, hey, as part of this contract, I want to make sure these 5 tests are passing all the time. Then comes SLA. Again, as we talked, what is the refresh max and latency, what is availability time, what is the retention, all of these things can be codified right here. And at any given point, you can actually switch to YAML editor if that is your favorite way of doing it. Go back and forth from UI to YAML, right? And hit save. This at the time we ask, again, most of the time when contracts are defined, it's just a YAML that sits there. We don't want to be just kind of a passive data contract. It's a living and breathing data contract. By that, we are going to check all the time if this table is holding the contract that is defined and agreed upon. So to that, you can actually say that, hey, I want this to be every hour, every day, every week. I want to make sure these contracts are getting checked and getting notified, right? You can also select the reviewers to review the common understanding between producers and consumers. Once you hit create, you get this view of, hey, here's a contract name, who created it. It's active now because the reviewers approved it. What version of data contract that we are on? Who are the reviewers? Description that we wrote. What is the contract status, right? We define 4 or 5 sections. Out of those, how many are actually being upheld? You see schema, semantics are great. Security is not great. Quality, few of them are failing. SLAs are being met. So from a contract standpoint, from a consumer standpoint, from a producer standpoint, we get a bird's eye view of, is this contract being upheld? Whenever these checks are failing, we automatically notify the producers and the downstream consumer saying that, hey, data contract is broken. Here is the details of it. And each of these sections kind of gives you more details about what is the quality as for this contract. Again, you can define the quality outside of this contract, have more tests or whatnot, but we are only concentrating on the tests that belongs here and showcasing how they're behaving. Similarly, based on the SLAs, again, we compute all the freshness metrics, all the pipeline statuses, and getting this here into the status. I think that's what I want. And, at the top level, it clearly shows the contract, upheld or failed. Again, anyone landing on this page directly in the schema page or whatnot, tells, hey, is this being upheld or not? Now, that's the overall, what we are trying to do, what we have built so far, what we are kind of going to ship in 1.9 and beyond. We So yeah, just to summarize, like what we have done is to build a data contract specifications and APIs that are going to be in release 1.8.0. Data contract UI right within OpenMetadata, and you can build all of these data contracts. And as a YAML, as user at the UI, schema automated checks, we already have a lot of building blocks that you're probably already using. You're getting a lot of wins out of it without this performance specification we have, which is built-in DQ test, incident management, alerts, root cause analysis. All of these are existing features that in OpenMetadata. So contracts and API specifications are getting shipped in 1.8.0. 1.9.0 will have the UI, the amazing UI that we just showed you, and schema automated checks and everything else will be part of that release as well. So that concludes what we're trying to ship. Again, please check out our GitHub issue, and we'll share the Figma mocks as well. Please provide us feedback. We always, with OpenMetadata, we want to build a feature that is used by a lot of community members, and your feedback is always helpful to fine tune the feature that we're delivering.